And we are live. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the stream. I hope that you're all doing well. I already see that Leo and Brenson are already there. Hello to the both of you. So I'm very happy to have you here tonight for a new interview with another member of the European Parliament. Tonight we will be discussing with Romanian MEP Dragos Pislaru from the Renew Group. So he's on the center of European politics. He's 45 and has been an MEP since 2019. So it's his first mandate in the European Parliament. He sits in the Committee on Economic and Monetary Affairs, the Committee on Employment and Social Affairs, and the Subcommittee on Tax Matters. He is also a substitute member in the Committee on Industry, Research and Energy. So we will be actually talking about topics that are different than usual. So that's a welcome change, and I'm sure you will enjoy it. So as usual, you know the drill. Before we start our conversation, I will do the usual reminders of the house rules for anyone who is new with us tonight. Hello Andrews, hello Blas. See, the chat is already active. So our guest will be with us for about an hour. After that, he will be able to leave and enjoy the rest of his evening, and I'll keep streaming for about half an hour to discuss with you all about what we thought about the interview, my own interpretation of things that might need additional explanation, that sort of thing. As usual, I prepared my own question for Mr. Pislaru, and I also collected questions from people on Reddit and Discord. So you can also, of course, ask your question via the chat. I will keep an eye on it and pick among your suggestions. So feel free to participate and react, but don't spam and stay civil. As you know, the goal of these interviews, of these MEPs interviews, is for you to understand better what is their job as MEP, and in this tonight, who is Mr. Pislaru, his priorities, and maybe some of his opinion on general EU political questions. I invite a variety of MEPs from different backgrounds so that they may share their opinion. That you may agree with it or not, that's not the point. The point being for you to observe this diversity and build your own opinion, while my own role is just to facilitate the discussion without taking a stand on the substance. So again, a reminder, we'll not go deep into policy discussions, we'll keep it light, and we will not touch on national politics unless it's relevant to EU politics. So keep that in mind when asking your questions. Hello Ikaros, Andrews, you're from Hungary, I didn't know that, so hi from Brussels. But anyway, let's do this. So let me change the window. Good evening and welcome to you, Dragos Pislaru. Thank you again for accepting to do this interview on my channel. So you heard me explain it to our viewers. The goal of tonight is to put faces on the European Union and to help people understand better what's going on in Brussels. And, well, MEPs are there just for that, so that's perfect. So tonight we will get to know you better and try to understand what you actually do in the Parliament and what you think about the EU. So, as I do usually, perhaps to start off a bit the discussion, can you briefly introduce yourself to the audience, and we'll pick up from there.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity at your service. Let's put it this way. And I'm not kidding. When I was elected in May 2019, that was the goal. The goal is to actually represent all of you here in Europe. And indeed, I really enjoy this invitation to clarify what I'm actually standing for and how I'm actually doing my job. There are already 2 years. Recently, we've actually marked 2 years since the elections, and I really believe that this is really important. Now, a few words about myself. Today is the International Children's Day, so I just want to start with a thing from my personal life. I'm a father of 4. I'm actually really in believing into creating a better world. I'm an idealist. I do believe that we need to work together and create access and opportunities for all of us. At the same time, I'm from a liberal family that believes in markets and believes in individual freedom and individual rights. Also, as a background, I'm indeed an economist, and I've been studying my Master of Science in London School of Economics, followed by a PhD in the Academy of Economics, Academy of Science in Romania. And later on, I've been quite a hybrid. I've been a professor for about 10 years, researcher, entrepreneur, and then state advisor for the Prime Minister on Economic Affairs, promoted then as a Minister of Labor and Social Affairs, going back to the corporate sector, and last but not least, being elected as an MEP. So this is a short intro from my side, and again, I'm looking forward to hearing your questions and to be able to tell you more.
Well, that's perfect. That's what we're here for. So that's quite a rich experience. So you went quite a back and forth between private, public sector, and now MEP. So I'm sure that's very useful in your daily work. But as you know, so MEPs are often specialized, and so my first question would be: what are the topics on which you usually work in the Parliament?
Now, the main committee that I'm actually, really doing a lot of work is actually the Employment and Social Affairs Committee, where I'm the coordinator from Renew Europe. For those of you that are, familiar, you know that the coordinator is the one that is more or less representing the team, the Renew Europe team. In my case, in terms of the political messages and our position. And as a coordinator, I've been behind many of the things that have actually been pushed forward. I was actually behind the resolution of the Parliament on the cross-border workers when there were a lot of difficulties at the beginning of the pandemics. I was behind the important discussion related to the child guarantee, and I was also involved, and I'm involved right now in all the main legislative files that are there, starting with the minimum wage, platform work, pay transparency, and many others. Now, at the same time, I had this amazing honor in the other committee that I'm present, actually, Economic and Monetary Affairs, to start working as early as in 2019 on a file that was called the Reform Support Program, RSP, and to be one of the voices promoting the RSP into what is right now known as RRF, Recovery and Resilience Facility. When everyone was asking for a bazooka, I was, as co-rapporteur of that RSP file, I actually suggested to convert it into the bazooka of 672.5 billion that is the RRF today. And I was then the co-rapporteur for the RRF. And then so that means that I was actually there to consolidate the Parliament position and then into trilogues. And the regulation is there, and the member states have actually already submitted, most of them, the national plans. This is one of the crucial moments of Europe in the recent history, and not only the most important effort of solidarity that we put together. And I was at the middle of it. I might write a book easily with the experience with the RRF. So, if you would like to follow the highlights of my activity, indeed, these two committees, Economic and Monetary Affairs and the RRF work, and obviously the other committee, the Employment and Social Affairs, not mentioning that I'm also actually on the file on the coordination of social security system, and in the Fisc committee, I'm also following the action plan, the tax action plan of the European Commission on behalf of Renew. So quite an array of things, and here obviously this is not limiting to that. I'm passionate in the intergroup of sport, children, and so on and so on. But let's see how the discussion develops, and I will give you more hints on that.
Yeah. And actually, speaking of the RRF, if I'm not mistaken, I think that Romania submitted yesterday or today its own national plan. So have you had a look at it already, or not?
Yeah. Luckily we are in government right now. So the minister that is actually coordinating the RRF in Romania is a colleague of mine in the party. Actually, it's a former member of the European Parliament.
Oh, okay.
It's Cristian Ghinea. So he actually went back, giving up to the MEP a position to coordinate the RRF. And indeed, the good news is that the plan has been submitted and well received. We've seen a tweet from Ursula von der Leyen congratulating in Romania for submitting the.
Well, that's good news then. So as we have heard you cover quite a lot of different topics. So you have to go back and forth for a bit between economy, budget, sport, child protection, that sort of thing. But
do you want to know the secret how I'm doing that? Because I think it's important.
Okay, let us know the secret. I'm sure the audience will want to.
So I have a great team indeed.
We like that. We like that. As a former assistant, it's good to thank the team.
I mean, again, this would have been impossible without, my colleagues, Bogdan, Tana, now Patricia, and all the interns and the local assistants that are really, doing a really great job. So indeed, I am actually going back and forth. The secrets of trade is that I am knowledgeable to a lot of extent, actually, in very many things because of my hybrid career so far. So I'm sometimes going, to assistance meeting, which are supposed to be technical. And it happened to me to be there by mistake at meetings that no MEP was expected. And after I realized that I'm the only MEP, I said, okay, okay, guys, so I will let you, do your work. But I'm tempted actually to work on technical issues because I've been working at this level for technical assistance and research on a variety of items. So anyway, sorry for the interruption.
I'm always in favor of a good shout out to the staff. Like I said, I'm former staff, so as the chat is saying, you know how to get on my good side. So that's part of your job as politician. But the question I wanted to go into is, so you cover a lot of topics. What would be the top three political objectives, top three things you would like to achieve policy-wise by the end of your mandate?
Yeah, that's very clear for me. So first topic is to be sure that the next generation would actually have a boost in this mandate. That means children and youth protection and access and opportunity to be at a different level. I've been advocating before, at the beginning of the RRF, that we cannot call the next generation EU something that when I done Control F on the initial text, the initial proposal did not include, the word children or youth in it. So basically I was the one pushing in my group the idea of creating a pillar for children and youth in the parliament, and we got there a large majority. And then in the trialogue, and you get a pillar out of the 6 pillars is a children and youth pillar there. And with my other, mandate in the employment and social affairs, I've actually taken on board, and I was actually quite persuasive and adamant when reacting from the European Parliament on the child guarantee. And indeed, what I'm actually trying to do is to have an EU coordination that will ensure that children will not be left behind anymore. I don't know if you know the statistics, but 22% of the children in the EU are actually in a situation of deprivation or poverty or lack of access to either education, health, proper nutrition or housing.
Wow, I didn't know that.
For an EU that is aspiring to be at the top of the game in worldwide, talking about high level and groundbreaking innovation, to have 1 in 5 children in this kind of conditions is not necessarily a performance. So that's actually one of my top priorities.
And this 1 in 5, since we're talking about these statistics, is this 1 in 5 child that does not have access to the most basic? Is it homogeneous in the EU, or is it more localized in certain region of the EU? How does it break down?
Obviously, the first stereotype would be that the children are more, located into, let's say, the new member states, east or south. But what you actually discover if you go more in depth is, for instance, if you look at Brussels, the poverty rate in children in Brussels is actually, quite worrying, and it's actually, going very close to the average that I was actually mentioning. So okay. You will find, this type of situation related to, really vulnerable groups, be that, linked with migrants and refugees, but also, with nothing, in common with migrant or refugees policies. You will find a lot of, families that have problems in actually raising properly their children in most of the EU countries, I would say. So, okay. Of course, there are some countries that have more difficulties, but basically you will find not necessarily homogeneous, but well spread across the EU.
Okay, interesting. Sorry, so I interrupted you. So first, your first objective is to get a good pillar for child protection. What else?
Yeah, just to explain, for me, this is considered an investment, and I want to push for reconsidering how we treat these programs for children and youth, because my pledge would be to treat them as an investment, as more or less like brick and mortar, with multi-annual programs, and being sure that we are acknowledging the return and involving the private sector and so on. But just to complete the image that I wanted to put there. The second thing, it's about mobility. I believe that there was a lot of negative emotion related to mobility. We've seen Brexit. We've seen, the new waves of extreme left and extreme right, especially going on. And I think that there is this nationalist movement and the idea that mobility should not be at the core value of the European Union. And I'm really, I was really impressed when the pandemic started to see that, the member states actually needed those people that were working in tourism or in agriculture or in the meat industry and so on. And I really believe that we should cherish more this mobility that we have. And that is actually another important topic that I'm actually putting forward. And the third and last topic that it is really important for me is digitalization. In areas that you would actually find less, let's say, sexy right now. But I find that, for instance, digital needs to be inclusive, and we need to be sure that it will not be a digital divide, and especially that we use digital for the purpose of actually having proper social services, and being sure that we reach people. And for that, I'm actually a promoter of the European Social Security number, promoting of the European identity, and programs that can actually have a direct impact on how we actually get close to everyone in all corners in Europe. And that's actually, again, not from a doctrinary leftist position. It's actually from the belief that technology and innovation and digital are actually changing for the better our lives. So that's actually top 3 for me. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's clear priorities. So I see that in the chat, Branson, who I know is Romanian, is asking about the RRF. So what part of the RRF is your favorite? What do you think will make the most difference in the development of Romania in the future?
I mean, if the question is about the RRP in Romania, I would say that the Romanian RRP is actually a mix. It's a combo. It has actually 2 combos. So first combo is obviously what all the RRPs have: investment and reforms. And it's very important to understand that we've actually fought quite hard when preparing the regulation to be sure that the money of the RRF will not be treated as an ATM, as a cash machine, because that was more or less. I shouldn't put shaming here, but I mean the initial intent was to have a lot of money to address the problem of budget deficits, and we managed from the parliament side to explain that this is the right moment of solidarity where to show the impact that we can have together. So indeed, we thought that it's actually crucial that the recommendation, the country-specific recommendation, the European semester, all these things that are pushing things for a better union, a more integrated union, should be at the highlight. And apart from the green and digital transformation, the reforms that we put forward in all the 6 pillars are important. So investment and reforms, structural reforms, things that can actually push further the agenda. And the second combo is, to some extent, the money needed to repair things and to redress the shocks that we have during the pandemics. And the other part of the combo is to be sure that we are in the avant-garde of the future, in the, modernizing Romania, in a way in which we will not be in an ever, fight for catching up to, from lagging behind to ever try to be catching up. We would like to be at the avant-garde of Europe in terms of technology and investment and so on. So the Romanian plan is actually with a lot of repair work, building the highways that we have not built for 30 years, doing the reform in the public administration, doing the investment in the education system, so we will have access in rural areas, doing the hospitals and the access to medical services in remote areas. So things that are actually hygiene factors, if you want design thinking theory. And on the other hand, there is about the revolution that is going on, and you find there, ambitious program related to energy use and the Green Deal. You have there with the renovation wave, a lot of things that are happening. you have, a lot of good things that are into digitalization and the way in which, for instance, on the cybersecurity and AI and other main technologies, we would like to be at the front of what Europe is doing. So these are the two components: investment and reforms, and on the other hand, repair the things that have not been done, for a while in the past, and be there in the avant-garde of Europe. So that would be,
the benefits for Romania, yeah. Okay, well, that's rather clear. I mean, regarding your priorities, I see in the chat that you tickled the curiosity of Little Miss Dairy, who's saying that she actually never heard about the idea of EU security numbers. So she's wondering, what are the hurdles for the implementation? The member states, or are there technical problems?
Yeah. So first of all, let me take out a particular, fear that usually is there. So, are we talking about imposing one number for all the citizens in EU? And the answer is no. I mean, the issue is not actually converting all the national numbers, but is basically to being sure that for those that are really mobile, and seasonal workers, and the ones that are traveling a lot, and they are, need to have some portability related to their rights and how they are addressed by authorities in different countries, they should have this particular advantage of having actually an ID, an electronic ID that they can actually use, and that can actually be easily implemented across the EU. So you have the option of having really one number that would be an identifier, or you can actually have a sort of interface in between the different identity numbers that we have in different member states, so that you can have an identifier, so that you can actually have portability for all the benefits that are actually acknowledged by EU legislation. But I mean, just to clarify, if you are working, for instance, if someone from France is working in Spain for a number of years, that particular person will have rights to get the pension also in Spain, because they've been working and that person worked there. And right now, the procedure for that person to apply for pension in Spain is really, really cumbersome. I mean, it can last up to 2 years' time. And that's something that is because the systems are not, digitalized. We don't have the ESI, the inter-exchange system that was supposed to be there. In Germany, there are regions where if you need, for instance, these portability rights issues, you need to use faxes. Again, wow. We are talking about 2021. Indeed, I'm not kidding. We've negotiated with the German presidency, and indeed there were regions that they were really concerned about, us being, pushing too far on digital. And indeed, the European Commission is actually saying that by 2024 we should have the single digital gateway and a lot of improvements. But I think that if we are actually keen on the digital transformation, we cannot leave people, cut a lot of trees because they need to do paperwork. That's not the reality that we should actually project for the future.
No, and also, who has a fax anymore? Apart from some administration, I can't even recall the last time I ever saw a fax machine.
We can test it right now, so you can enter. Actually, I think that I've noted somewhere. There are fax numbers on the websites of several.
Yes, I know that there are. In theory, the Parliament, each MEP office has a fax number, but I've never seen anyone send a fax to an MEP. But anyway, so I see other questions in the chat, so let me go through it. So while we are, I saw your question, Lopesha. We'll just come back to it later because there's a question that is related to the discussion we're having right now from Andros, who's saying, would a universal basic income be more effective than EU minimum wage to close the wealth gap between West and East?
This is a worth having debate. This universal income is actually, starting from a very, important premise. The fact that when a particular individual is in a situation of unpredictability and it's actually struggling to find work, and in a situation of poverty, usually people in poverty are making bad choices. And I'm not kidding. Really, there is actually a lot of research done on the fact that basically poverty is actually pressurizing, from a mental perspective, people into having, very short-term decisions that are not necessarily optimal. So basically, the whole rationale behind is that if you are giving a safety net, this universal income, minimum income, and allowing people to know that they can still wait and not taking the first offer there, or being sure that they have the food to feed their children, or to be able to actually have decent clothing and not being ashamed when going to interviews or to potential work. So these are actually things that really matter, and psychologically they are impacting people. Now, from this anthropological, psychological issue that is actually, I think that is quite sensible, to what is actually really taking into practice, that's another thing. Finland has actually done an experiment. They've selected a sample of people, and they've actually provided this universal minimum income, and they've actually waited to see the welfare effects of that across a particular time period. And the results were not conclusive. I mean, there was not clear at all that people that were actually receiving the minimum universal income, they were actually better off, or they've done any endeavors to improve their condition and for a more independent living. So that's a first result, and this was one experiment that was actually weighted for a lot of researchers and policy makers. Now, there are variations of that going on. Spain, in the context of pandemics, have actually announced some measures in that direction. There were debates in New Zealand as well on that. But the whole point is that, there is a quintessential thing about the motivation of people. On one hand, indeed, having a minimum level of decent life is actually encouraging people not to have this harsh short-term decision. On the other hand, there is a lot of complacency that can actually lead to some sort of a Stockholm syndrome, where people are actually getting dependent to their public authorities that are providing that, and they are not actually fulfilling their ambitions. So it's actually a trade-off, and we are not having right now, I think, a way to say that clearly 100% an universal income would actually solve the problem. I mean, very briefly on the minimum wage, because there was a comparison. The minimum wage is something completely different, and right now the proposal for a directive on the minimum wage is something that, despite some Nordic countries actually saying that, their practices are by far better than any kind of directive at EU level. There are some good things about, being sure that there is basically some sort of a following of a minimum wage in function of some of the macro indicators, like or indicators in a particular member, like purchasing power or development, or grow GDP growth, or some sort of relations to how indeed the society is developing. In the sense that in many member states, if you look at the level of minimum wage that is supposed basically to allow you to have a minimum decent living. I mean, there are a lot of situations where you have what is called in-work poverty. So the whole point of the minimum wage is actually to address the fact that the remuneration should actually be attractive and allowing people to have decent living. And I am actually saying that even for a centrist group as mine, as Renew, we acknowledge the fact that we should fight against poverty at work, and we should try to, allow people to have, through their means and through skills and skilling and upskilling and, trying to get better jobs, to allow people actually to have actually a better living through their own means, through working and enriching their lives by, feeling that they have an impact.
Okay. That's actually quite an interesting debate. That indeed, it's we hear more and more this discussion about. The universal basic income is more of a general concept at the moment. So at the moment there's more experiments than anything, but we hear the EU minimum wage topic raising more and more. So that's always interesting to hear that. I'm going back to.
There are two different things.
Completely two different things. I agree. Not to be mistaken with one another. I'm going back to the question from Leo Pacia, so also Romanian. Who is asking, when do you think Romania will enter Schengen, the Schengen space? So.
I think that we are actually on a good path. Right now, that Schengen has been conditioned somehow with the with the cooperation mechanism, with the screening and monitoring of the justice system. And the preliminary report that we actually got, and the reports from, Greco and the European Commission are gradually improving. I think that the current government is actually taking a series of commitments related to mending some problems caused by the previous government putting pressure on prosecutors and trying to accommodate basically some of the condition in which the judicial sector is operating, and thus not respecting the balance of power and the separation of powers. So I think that if we will be able to adopt the legislation that we have right now in the government program in Romania, the report would be definitely favorable, and then it will be just a question of lobbying, because technically we are actually already checking the boxes related to the conditions at border control and so on. If we going to check the justice system problems and being sure that we have a system that addresses corruption very well. We have right now actually the European prosecutor being the former Romanian lead on anti-corruption movement, and I do believe that Romania has a chance to give a timeline to enter basically in as early as late at the end of this year, the beginning of next year, into Schengen, if we are moving fast with the legislation and administrative measures that have been mentioned.
Okay, well, actually, you anticipated one of my next question, because since we were talking about justice, I wanted to talk about the EU prosecution office that was launched today, and that, as you said, is headed by a Romanian, Laura Kövesi, so who is a famous anti-corruption prosecutor back in Romania. There was a lot of drama about how she left the job in Romania. So I was wondering if you could explain a bit to the viewers, what is the EU prosecution office, what is this new body, why Mrs. Kövesi was chosen, etc., etc.
Yeah, you mentioned that the conditions in which she left the office, the conditions in which she was forced to leave her office in Romania, just for the sake of, being factually correct. Basically she became, quite a person that was annoying the government, because she had quite clear views on the anti-corruption, let's say, procedure and legislation in Romania. So she was basically forced to leave her position. And I was really delighted, and we from our political party and from the group, we've been supporting very seriously Laura Kövesi's positioning, as a candidate for the prosecutor. Now, what is this institution? The institution is actually quite simple. It's about coordinating basically across the EU the activity that is about corruption and about embezzlement of funds, and basically to be sure that we are actually true to our values in Europe, and to the fact that we are not having politicians as free riders, that on one hand basically are using European money, and the other hand are actually then trying to be propagating actually things for let's say their own interest, or to some of the people in the countries that should actually be not accountable for the way in which they operated with EU funding or against EU principles. So I really believe this new institution is actually adding to what Olaf was actually doing, and the Court of Auditors was also doing. And I think that right now we have actually a function that is actually really, really important, to be sure there is no free riding, and that there is no temptation anymore to have this dual behavior. On one hand, saying that we need EU support and we are acknowledging EU legislation, on the other hand breaching in the member state this very basic principle. So I salute actually the fact that we are right now having a functional EPO, and of course I'm really glad that Laura Kövesi is the one that leading it. I mean, she has led by example actually the anti-corruption fight in many countries, and right now she's very well positioned to continue that at EU level.
One last question on Romania before we go back to more of a Brussels center question. So Romania has been a rather recent addition to the EU. You entered in the EU in 2007. So perhaps can you tell us, as a Romanian, the place that the EU occupied for Romania? What was the perception of it before entering the EU, and what's the perception after entering the EU? Do you feel that the EU fulfilled Romanian expectation?
I mean, I think that this is an amazingly good question, because I just want to explain to you how important the European Union was as an anchor for Romania's development. So in 1989, there was the revolution, and we've actually parted from a dictatorship, from a system that was by no means democratic, and we actually done the first steps towards democracy, rule of law, towards acknowledging the individual freedom and the right of freedom of expression and so on. So the process was amazing, and as early as in 1993, we started the association agreement, partnership agreement, 1995. And then it was an amazing process, starting with 2000, the negotiation for accession. And basically what we've done is we've actually adopted most of the acquis communautaire in reinforcing basically the institution, democratic institution in Romania. The type of support that we receive in order to ensure the convergence of Romania and to catch up was also amazing. EU is by far, the most important partner in terms of trade, in terms of everything, and Romania will actually remain indebted to the European Union for the fact that indeed we were actually supported along the way. On the other hand, Romania is contributing actually to the European Union, so it's paying the debts at the same time, in the sense that a lot of businesses are actually doing, amazing. They're having amazing results in Romania, and actually there are a lot of member states in Western Europe or Northern Europe that are capitalizing a lot on the fact that Romania is a large market, on the fact that Romania had actually amazingly well specialized doctors, engineers, and many other professions that are right now across Europe. So I think that indeed it's a win-win thing. And for me personally, I mean, I was growing and having in high school and in my college years while in Romania, studying and being part of this European dream. And so for me right now to be an MEP and trying to help, the deepening and the widening of the European Union, for me that's really a privilege. So I just want to explain for those that are not that aware about what kind of development I'm talking here. Romania has actually increased their GDP, for 448%. So if you can understand, when we started actually the negotiation and so on, we have actually increased the GDP 448%. Yeah, if you compare to 1989, the results are, given the way we started, we are actually talking about, multiples that are rivalizing with technology companies and so on. But what I'm trying to say is that from the moment we really started, preparation for accession to now, we are talking about this kind of numbers, and the way in which Romania was growing and moving towards the EU average is really impressive. So indeed, we are lagging still behind in several things. We are still, among the last in the DESI index, in child poverty and many other fields. But we are actually catching up at a pace that would be impossible to conceive in some of the, let's say, right now more mature and Pareto optimal economies in some other parts of Europe. So that's really impressive, and that's actually because we are part of this European dream, and the whole point is to contribute and to be part of it, to be sure that Romania is actually, putting our effort as well in common with all the other member states for this European project.
Well, that's indeed impressive. I didn't know about the actual growth rate. That's crazy numbers. That's that's a good thing. That's a concrete proof that's what the EU can do for you. I'm sure that would have been useful for back during the Brexit debate. But let's not dive into that.
One short thing. I mean, you will find basically a lot of Romanians bickering about the fact that things are not going well and we're not moving and the speed is not good and so, and they are all correct. I mean, the potential that we have was tenfold more, but if you are looking at what the data and the indicators are actually showing, I mean, they are really amazing. I mean, honestly, Romania was called at a particular moment the potential tiger of Europe, in analogy with Eastern Asia.
Yes.
And indeed, because of the size of the economy and the size of the country, and again, it's the seventh, and now it's the sixth actually country in terms of population and surface. I mean, it's actually something that is really notable. So we are not actually one of the smallest countries. We are actually a significant player after Poland in keeping
you're a big market, yeah, of course.
Yeah, keeping the entire Central and Eastern thing together, and we are actually the ones keeping the values of the EU at the eastern border, and that we don't have very, very many friends in that direction, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's been a bit complicated in the region, indeed, especially of late. But let's go back to Brussels. Actually, I see that Little Miss Derry is asking, what is as an MEP, what would you say is the good part, the bad part, and the most surprising part of being an MEP? Best, bad, and surprising.
Yeah, I thought that there's an analogy with the Clint Eastwood movie.
Yeah, she started like that. And,
okay. So the good part is that this is an amazing, professional world where you are actually having, very bright people. If you remember those school years, for those of you who are more nerdish, I mean, there was this kind of atmosphere that you see that your colleague is doing, good things, and you will try then to outcompete and to be sure that you are getting a better grade and so on and so forth. So for those of you that were competitive in your school years, I mean, you will know what I'm talking about. So it's about, this effervescence that is going on, and people are coming with ideas and trying actually, to move things and to leave the path dependency and the inertia and to think about how to improve things. And that's amazing. And I really enjoy what I'm doing. I mean, I've been, studying and, learning from what I've doing for years. And right now I have this amazing opportunity to push forward the agenda, and it's feasible. I mean, I've mentioned you the fact that I had a direct impact on really crucial regulations, and I'm feeling like a kid with, a box of candies. I mean, a jar of candies. I mean, I really feel that I can make an impact, and I'm working again with really good professionals. So that's the good part. The bad part is that despite the fact that we are actually building coalitions and we are actually building majorities and so on, there are still boxes and silos, and people are attaching labels, and you need to actually go through barricades in order to actually put something new on table, and there's a lot of bureaucracy going on, and it's a lot of this type of let's say grouping for the sake of just blocking something instead of having a forward-looking regulation, and indeed that's actually one of the most important things. I found surprisingly bothering the fact that sometimes we are sometimes caught onto this thing that we are regulating in fear of potential developments rather than regulating with a forward-looking vision of how to improve things. Even in debates that are going a little well these days, like AI or digitalization or Green Deal, there was always the fear that we are not going to do well, or there are going to be costs, and then we are going to lose jobs. But on the other hand, we can create jobs, even better jobs. We can, create a better world. We can have digital as being not just a sectoral thing, but embedded actually in our lives and make it better. So that's actually the bad part, the fact that we are still more or less slaves of, different prejudices and boxes and silos and so on. And the surprising part, I mean, the surprising part is that, I mean, I've been, learning and teaching about EU institutions and, how difficult things are and, how I mean, your voice cannot actually matter and so on. The surprising fact is, this is really amazing to see that you can project, and if you are working enough for that, and if you are actually doing your good thing, you can actually push the agenda further. You can actually bring people together. You can actually listen to people and take their ideas and push them forward. And I'm really optimistic about how Europe will actually look in the future. I've seen a parliament in May 2019 that was completely, not completely, but 2/3 of the MEPs were new, young blood, or let's say new blood, let's put it this way. And I really believe that this is actually, having an impact on how, on more innovation and more openness on putting things forward. So this will be the good, the bad, and surprising, yeah.
Yeah, I see little Miss Derrida so that we spotted a reference to Clint Eastwood, but she said that surprising was more fitting to your happy, expensive person. So take it as a compliment.
I bow to that, indeed. I mean, I really prefer to see a beauty even in what others are perceiving ugly. So I am actually an incurable idealist. So that is actually true. I'm trying to find the good thing in everything that is otherwise considered or portrayed as being, ugly or unacceptable or whatever. So that's actually one of my curse.
No, that's not a curse. That's not a curse to be positive. And speaking of being positive, that's a question I got from Discord. So, who do you think is the most implicated or active Romanian MEP in the current parliament, except of course those from your party? So, simply put, which Romanian MEP do you get along the best with?
I mean, I really believe that my work with Siegfried Mureșan for the RRF was amazing. I mean, who would have guessed that 2 Romanian MEPs will be 2 out of the 3 co-rapporteurs on the most important file ever in terms of budget implications and symbolic value and response to pandemics and so on. So the way in which I've worked with Siegfried, I mean, that was outstanding, really. We had we were actually having our messages from our political groups, and again, we've been looking actually, we transcended by far the Romanian national agenda. So we were there acting, the way in which, the citizens are expecting the MEPs to act in the interest of the entire community, and 2 Romanians in the same, negotiation. I mean, that was really amazing. So he would be my first choice by far.
Okay, well, apparently that doesn't surprise Branson. He's the one who asked him about it, so he's not surprised. So another question, more on the daily life as an MEP. So how has the pandemic changed things? So within the life of the parliament, we know that many committee meetings and sessions are being done virtually. You hardly go to Strasbourg. We haven't gone to Strasbourg in over a year now. How does it affect, if it affects the legislative work? How can you work as an MEP?
I mean, obviously, we got used with any potential technology from Zoom, WebEx, and everything you want, and so on and so forth. But and it works to some extent. I mean, you can exchange information and so on. But when it comes to, for instance, sensitive things like building a relation with the people in a negotiation team and so on, I mean, that's really tricky. I'm actually relying a lot on emotional intelligence and empathy. I really believe that when I'm actually with someone in the same room, I'm actually connecting with that particular person, and I'm more or less changing myself as a result of that interaction and hoping to change something in my interlocutor. So that was actually a little bit tricky, because it's really difficult to be that empathic to someone that is over a connection, and especially if the connection is not working very well, or if you have a translation, then it's even more difficult. So I was quite lucky that we, the MEPs, had some special rules going on. So for instance, when we were in trilogues, or negotiations, we were allowed actually to go, physically. And I was actually using all those opportunities, and we have dozens of physical meetings by that time. And there was a lot of risk, obviously, but I think that actually was really important. So if I'm actually saying how my life was affected from a professional standpoint, is that I think that I would have done even more or better by having these personal interactions and networking and so on. But otherwise, again, on the most important files, I was allowed to do that, and this was helping me a lot. Personally, that was amazing actually, to stay more with my kids.
I can imagine that, yeah.
I need to confess that was the case, and it was an important lesson, and cherishing more how they grow and how they are doing things. And I was doing a lot more jogging and trying to stay fit somehow, and to preserve my mental sanity. Otherwise, I mean, again, I should not complain. I mean, there were people really struggling, and I had all the conditions needed, and I was able to actually go to my office, obviously alone, without assistance, but go to my office, have a tranquility when I needed actually to focus on what I'm doing, and at the same time even interacting when negotiations were really important.
Okay, well, that's interesting, but yeah, indeed, we know that in the first few months it was a bit complicated to find the good pace, how to go around this situation. But fingers crossed, it won't be like that for too long. Hopefully. Yeah, fingers crossed. Moving on. So another question that came from Discord. So. I'm going to read the question, that will be way simpler. So what could a young person, a student to be more precise, could do to be more connected and in touch with European politics? So that means keeping up to date with the news, the development in EU politics, but also see the inside of the works of the Parliament and the Commission without being a full-time employee.
Yeah, I mean, there are several answers to that. So first thing is that, if you are an assertive student and you follow a little bit what an MEP is doing, you can just write a message asking about internships. And we as MEPs are organizing this type of internships. And I had, for instance, 2 interns. And I had actually 2 interns, I think, all the time from the end of 2019 or the fall of 2019. Mm-hmm. So that's one direct thing you can do. You can actually, do an internship and be there. The second thing is that, as a promoter of children and youth policies, I'm actually interacting a lot of, youth associations, be that, students or, other type of association, European Youth Forum and so on. And if you want to get involved into that, I think that you'll find that there are a lot of organizations, student or youth organizations that are actually doing a, very decent work in, being connected with what is happening, and you can contribute there. And then as part of that organization, you have a lot of open doors also with MEPs. I had several consultations before, for instance, the RRF negotiations, and right now, as part of my work as a member of the monitoring working group for the RRF, and I'm actually, pushing forward. Even today, I had a group, a working group for Renew, where we have decided actually to organize Renew consultations with children and youth associations, just to be closer to, what is actually the perception and the reality of implementing the RRPs in each of the member states on this particular children and youth pillar. So these are 2 ways in which students can get involved, and apart from just asking questions on Facebook or reaching on social media and so on. And indeed, you will be surprised, there are MEPs reading messages there.
Yes. They are. Sometimes it's a bit of a nightmare for staff when the MEPs handle their own social media. It can be stressful as staff. I can disclose that. Moving on. So next question, which is, let's look forward. So you had quite a diverse experience in your life, as you mentioned. So right now you're an MEP, but what about your future? After your mandate, what would you like to do? You want to stay as an MEP? You want to go back to national politics? How do you see the future for you?
That's actually quite tricky. I'm right now, despite the fact that I've been, doing quite a lot of things, and I think that I'm decently well, in terms of skills and angles. But I really believe that right now I'm actually I'm on a very fast learning curve, and a lot of things that have been actually distilled through the years. Right now, I'm actually putting them, together and forming the right skill set. I'm still new to politics. I've been into politics for just 3 years. My mandate as a Minister of Labor was in a technocrat government. I really believe that we should actually do a lot of things in Romania. So I'm actually following all the time what is happening in Romania, and from time to time I'm frustrated that some of the ideas that are really low-hanging fruits, or some structural changes, are not actually pushed forward. Right now we are already in government, so I think that there are more and more things that we can do. But to answer directly your question, I think that 2024 will be a very complicated year with a lot of choices. There are all the elections possible in Romania in that year. So you have local election, parliament election, presidential election, and an European Parliament election in the same year. So there are a lot of options going on. It depends on how well I am going to develop my skill set. I will actually, communicate and allow people to understand the good things that I'm doing, hopefully. And again, to the extent actually involve also at grassroots level, because any politician needs a constituency in order to be sure that you are actually effective in putting forward a particular agenda. So there are a lot of things to build still for about 2-3 years before making a choice in 2024. And again, I can actually do quite a lot of things, and again, I might continue my activity at European level, but if I will have an opportunity to make a difference in Romania, I will not hesitate as well.
Okay, well, that's pretty clear. Let's finish the interview with what is now a classic of all my interviews. What is your view on the idea of a federal European Union, and what is your take on the process for trying to create a more integrated union?
I mean, that's for me, it's a very easy question. I'm actually, very much in favor of a federal Europe. You remind me that I'm actually trying to get into the Spinelli group for like a couple of months, but I was too busy doing other things. But indeed, I'm with Guy Verhofstadt and my other colleagues on that. I do believe that we need more Europe, and more Europe is actually better for all of us. I do believe that there is a balance in which you can preserve your national values and without actually compromising them, while at the same time pushing for more Europe. And I'm actually in the Econ committee, and I would like to see the banking union going on, capital market union going on, maybe even do a little bit of breakthrough in the tax thing, because we are actually having crazy competition going on there. I do believe that, for instance, right now with health, we've moved a little bit forward with the EU for Health program, but we still are lagging behind in what EU can do in terms of education, social as well. We are actually trying to push a little bit with minimum wage or platform work, but I would like to see more in the area of skills and increasing involvement in coordinating the social policies for the European pillar of social rights and so on. So I think that and I've given only just a couple of things, not to mention industrial policy or research and innovation or energy and so on, fields where I feel that more European can actually get better results. So pro-European clearly, pro-federal clearly. I believe that we should not rush, so we should allow people to understand and get the trust needed. And for that, we still need to do a lot of work, because people are still trusting their national authorities more than European authorities, and we still need to be fending and fighting against Euroscepticism and a new nationalist wave, and for that we need to deliver. So if we deliver and we listen to people, and we listen and act upon listening to people, then we will have a chance to move towards a more Europe and to more federal system.
Okay. And as the very final question, I think Branson in chat found the perfect one. So since it's Children's Day, do you know what your children's favorite video game is?
From my childhood, you mean?
No, from your own children. Do you know what's the favorite video game of your own children, if any?
I mean, of course, but it depends from child to child. For instance, I mean, they are not, one size fits all. So,
yeah, I know, but
yeah. So, for instance, my elder son, that is 16, is playing Apex Legend.
Good one.
Yeah, he used to be, really good in Overwatch, but he shifted actually to Apex Legends. The second one is actually a Fortnite fan, and I've tried actually to lure him. I was a gamer myself to some extent. I was playing heavily World of Warcraft, for instance.
Okay.
Yeah, and right now with the new relaunch and everything, I was trying to lure him into it, and he has a nice hunter character that he maxed alongside myself, so that was a nice experience. And for the little ones, I mean, they are into everything. I think that I've discovered actually that Paul, the third one, is actually right now liking more and more chess and rummy, whereas the smallest one, the little Theo, is actually a lot into those mobile games that you can actually play on. He actually is actually abducting my wife's mobile and my mobile phone, and she's playing there. So each and every one of them actually having their own preferences, but these are a few of the games that are playing.
Well, I can tell you that chat is convinced. So if chat is convinced, I'm convinced. So on this note, we reached about an hour. So I will give you the last word before you go. So say whatever you would want to say to the chat before you have to go.
I mean, I will say a big thanks for those that have followed, and I'm really delighted that I could have answered some of the questions. I think that one of the most important roles as MEP is to provide a model, or maybe to try to convince that we are, doing some decent job here, representing you. And then again, it will be very complicated to try to have a better and stronger Europe if we don't have, the right people that are pushing there. So I hope that, most of the assistants that are actually following, there will be, amazing MEPs at someday. And I'm really, happy to be sure that I'm discussing with the potential leaders of tomorrow. And meanwhile, I will try to do my best to move the project further. And last message, today is the Children's Day, so happy birthday, and a lot of appreciation for all the children. If you have your own children, then that this is really amazing. And if you don't have children yet, then you can just cherish the children inside you, and be sure that you're not going to lose this particular touch that is so important in trying to project an ideal world in the future. So thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm delighted for this hour that I could have shared with you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Pislaru, because it was actually it was very interesting. I see the chat is you turned the chat into big fan. They love your positivity, so you made a lot of happy people tonight. So chat, make sure to thank Mr. Pislaru for his time. Make sure to check his social media. You can see it below the video feed. And thanks again, Mr. Pislaru, and on this we will start the debriefing. So have a good evening, Mr. Pislaru, and hopefully we'll see you here again some other time.
Thank you, and take care, guys, and let's meet each other in some time and see what we have accomplished. And that's actually the point of it. So thank you so much for having me. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye. All right, guys. So, what did we think? I think that the overall consensus will be that it was a positive meeting. He's a very positive guy. I have to say, he popped me up quite a bit. So I will definitely place him in my among my top interviews so far. So it was good, and it was interesting as well because we covered topic that we've never discussed or very little on the on stream. Actually, I was telling him before that before the stream actually started, because we've talked a lot about trade policy, we talked about energy policy, environment policy, but we actually never delved into economy and this sort of topic. So that was refreshing. That was good. I see. Yeah, Little Miss Derry. I noticed that you were quite a bit of a fan. So L'Europäische, Brentzen, I hope you were satisfied, because I know L'Europäische, you were quite looking forward to having a Romanian MEP participate to an interview. So I hope it satisfied your needs, and hopefully we will have more Romanian MEP in the future. So from September, I will send a new round of interview requests in probably in a couple of weeks to try to prepare the new round of interviews from September. So fingers crossed, we will have more Romanian MEPs. But anyway, let's look at my notes that I took during the interview. We covered quite a bit of things, and there was quite a few topics that I found very interesting. So. He's very charming, as you say. He said it himself. He relies a lot on emotional intelligence, on human contact. So yeah, it really transpires even through Zoom. So I found it was a nice touch to thank the staff and his assistant on stream. So I mean, I say that also as a former assistant. Of course, that's I'm sensitive to these things. That's really something that MEPs tend to do. You will often see, well, not often, maybe a strong word, but on a regular basis, you will see MEPs when they finish a file, when it's being voted, either in committee or in plenary, they will actually thank their staff. They will say, okay, well, they do their final speech, and they say, well, I want to thank my staff. I want to thank the secretariat that helped me a lot, etc. Some of them go as far as to mention them in plenary meetings, their staff. So that's always a nice touch, because EU politics and parliamentary work is very much a team effort, and an MEP always needs a good team. Otherwise, he can't do much. So that's always appreciated when they thank the staff. So that's the first thing. I'm looking at the chat. Carol saying that I will be signing his amendments on the next resolution. Actually, you can't do amendments on resolutions. You can. Well, yes, you can do, but usually it's more of the block. But let's not dive into parliamentary procedure. It's boring. In any case, I can't exactly sign it. Other topic that was interesting that he covered, so, and we touched upon that later in the interview, was the idea of mobility. So he said that mobility was important as a policy for him, and he came back on it later on, and that I suspected that it was related to Schengen, because as he mentioned, Romania right now is not part of the Schengen area. Not all members of the European Union are part of the Schengen space. I think 4 of them are currently out of it. So from memory, I know that Romania, I know that Bulgaria is out of it, and the 2 other, I have to confess, I forgot. Maybe. No, Croatia is in it, but well, there are 4 of them who are not in there. It's true that Romania has been trying for quite a while to get in, but has been facing resistance on the one end because of the judiciary reform, the justice reforms that are necessary before doing before being able to enter the Schengen area, and he said that there has been progress on that, and that on paper they tick all the boxes, but I don't know that. I will leave it to the Commission to judge on that. But politically, there's also a political argument behind the fact that Romania is not part of the Schengen area, is because in some member states it's seen as politically toxic to have Romania being part of the Schengen area, because not to name any member state, but in Germany, in France, in the Western member states, Romania do not necessarily have the best reputation for whatever reason. So it's always politically sensitive for governments to say that they support the entrance of Romania in Schengen. So that's one of the reasons why they have not they have not joined so far. So that was something that I thought was interesting to mention, and indeed it has been one of the long time demand of Romania. And yes, the Netherlands, yes, you're right, European blocked for a long time, but yes, I would expect, without remembering the exact, I would expect that the most hardcore on this would be the Denmark, Netherlands, France and Germany, I would say, most likely, maybe Spain. But yeah, you are being blocked in council for quite some time due to national politics, basically. But well, we'll see how things evolve beyond that. There was an interesting discussion on the universal basic income and the EU minimum wage. That's indeed something that is interesting. I knew that that in Finland, indeed, there has been like a trial of this universal basic income. I didn't know that it was not conclusive. I think I didn't manage to check on the internet before during the interview. But I think in France there was also some regions that made a try. Let me check live. Universal income, France. I don't see anything. Oh, apparently yes. The National Assembly decided to explore it, so there must be like a tryout. So it was decided at the end of 2020. So probably in the context of the answer to the pandemic. So apparently they will look into this, but so far there is no number. But anyway, that's indeed a topic that is rising, and of course very different from the EU minimum wage. And I saw that Icarus was being a bit disappointed in his own government, so in Denmark, and Mr. Pislaru mentioned the Nordic countries, because I mean, contrary to what many people believe, one of the problem with the political problem with the EU minimum wage is that actually some of the richer country or the most perceived as being socially advanced country, social friendly countries, so the Scandinavian country, for instance, actually are against this, because they are afraid that either they do not have a minimum wage themselves, or they are afraid that any kind of EU minimum wage would actually undermine their own system, so that they would lose in it. So that's something that some trade unions actually are quite vocal against EU minimum wage, because they are afraid that it would be less than what they have nationally, or that it would create some unfair competition with other countries, etc., etc. So actually, the people who block the EU minimum wage are not always those you think. So this time, I think it risks setting a lower standard than we can reach through collective bargaining. Exactly, that's that. Because in Scandinavia, on a lot of things, it works through collective bargaining. So you do not have a state-imposed minimum wage, and that works in a lot of different things. But it's negotiated collectively, and so there is this fear that they would get less than what they can get through collective bargaining. So it's always a bit tricky in this. And Icarus says they are afraid that people won't be union members if the government has minimum wage, thus reducing the potential growth from collective bargaining. So yeah, basically it comes back to indeed what Thalias was saying. So. That's actually interesting, because most people don't usually think of that in this collective mindset. Is like, oh yeah, the Scandinavian country, the Nordic countries are very socially progressive, so they would be happy to have that. But actually, they are among those who block this initiative for national reasons. But I always thought it was an interesting political debate, even if I never delved into the technicalities. Another very interesting point I thought was what Europe represented for Romania as a former dictatorship. So as he said himself, the EU was the represented kind of a hope for Romania as a former dictatorship. And I mean, I had no idea about the number. I knew the numbers would be high, but I noted down 448% GDP growth since 1989. That's insane. That's properly insane. But it shows the level of economic growth that can be created following that, and it's a trend you can see in many EU countries. I mean, you have seen throughout history that the EU has constituted economic hope, but also political hope. So economic hope for countries that were rather undeveloped. Sorry, I have a sneeze coming and I can't sneeze, so it's very annoying. I'm getting distracted by that. Sorry about that. Anyway, let's get back to it. So yeah. Economically, the EU has been quite a high potential. So, of course, in Eastern Europe, we have seen that, and Romania is a good example of that. But closer to home, at least from the French perspective, if you look at Spain, for instance, Spain and Portugal, when they entered the EU, so in the 70s, they were super poor. They were poor countries compared to what France, what Germany, what the rest of Western Europe was. So they were really they were poor. And today, even if Spain is economically poorer than France and Germany, it's still among the rich Western countries. So it's you can see the economic progress, the crazy economic progress that's happening within 30-40 years thanks to the EU being the EU, so these common markets, these common rules and all that. So it's and we see that again in the Eastern countries now. So I'm just looking at the chat. Okay, so there's still debate on the wages and the union. But yeah, so there is this economic impact of the EU, and like I said, it would have been useful to tell that back during the time of Brexit, even if, of course, you can't compare the situation of Romania economically with the situation of the UK. The UK has always been a rich country, so it's not as clear cut as that. And actually, one of the worries of the UK was that they were paying for the Eastern European countries to catch up. But also you have to consider the political aspect of it, because, like he mentioned, Romania was a former dictatorship, but it's far from being the only one. So of course you can think about the former USSR countries, and the former Soviet bloc that were all not very much democracies out there. But you also had Spain, you had Portugal, you had Greece, and for all these countries it was actually very big deal to have the EU, because it was very much a hope, something to look forward to, and that's what motivated them and what pushed them forward to make all the reforms. And we've seen that to a lesser extent in Ukraine, even if then it pissed off Russia, of course, but we have seen that to a lesser extent in Ukraine as well. So you should not underestimate the attractiveness that the political attractiveness that the EU has on a democratic level, and that's to an extent the economic attractiveness. And that's the carrot that we're using to get countries that are in transition to do the reforms. If you can think about the Balkan countries right now, who are pushed to doing the reforms with the idea that if they do the reforms, they will be able, A, to progress economically, and B, to enter in the EU one day. And that's always a question of managing expectation as well, because there is right now there is no appetite within the member state to extend to get new member state in the European Union. But I think there is consensus in the idea that the Balkan states at some point will enter the EU. I mean, they are legitimate to enter it. It's just a question of when. But indeed, you have to manage this kind of expectations. So feel free to react. I'm rambling, but feel free to chip in if you want. So I'm looking into the rest of my notes. Yeah, I was saying that the surprising thing that he found as an MEP was the fact that you couldn't push things forward and that you are being recognized, and that's indeed something that many MEPs find it surprising in the first place, especially when they come from certain national political culture that you don't have that, which is if you don't have the let's say the political support of the party, it's impossible to be relevant. While in the EU, in the parliament, I'm not saying that it's always the case, but if you work hard, you are likely to be recognized for your efforts, for your competence, and you can get things forward. So that's actually something that is indeed a practice in Brussels, in the European Parliament. So Blas is saying, yeah, you can tell Montenegro, they see the EU as the only way to recover their sovereignty, which has been sold to China. So yeah, indeed, and there is a bit of a geopolitical chess game in the Balkan between the EU, Russia, and China, because China is trying to buy everything it can to get. I don't want to say political allegiance, but sympathies to its own agenda. Russia sees the Balkan as a brother state and not exactly part of his backyard, but still, it's a space that is politically sensitive for Russia. So there has been debate as to whether the EU has not been doing enough in the Balkan region, and so if by doing that we were not pushing these states away from the EU and more into Russia or China's arms, who are more than happy to provide whatever they want economically without asking question or requiring burdensome or reforms and stuff like that. Nika was saying Europe needs to stumble upon another ambitious and optimistic era like the 90s, where we're willing to be interesting and enlarge. Yeah, it's true, but at the same time, the fact, I mean, yes and no. I agree with you, we need to be more ambitious and optimistic, but without being too optimistic, because part of the issue that we meet right now was because we were a bit too, I don't want to say naive, but a bit too optimistic about things, like when we got 10 when we did the enlargement with the 10 Eastern Europe countries entering at once, we thought, oh yeah, well, they will get up to speed, everything will be fine, they will get like the Western countries, everyone will be happy, everyone will be one big happy family. And it turns out it's not the case, because things did not go according to plan. And I think that the big and large, a lot of the issues that we're facing, not a lot of the issues, a good part of the issues that we are dealing with right now, politically speaking, and also in terms of perception of the EU, is a consequence of this big enlargement that was not necessarily well managed. It was maybe a bit too much to chew at the same time. It was a bit too optimistic that the Eastern Europe will be like Western Europe, but it's not the case. Blast saying we can't think about enlargement while we have the stupid unanimity in the UCO. I don't think it's a question of the problem is not unanimity, and whatever happens, you will always have unanimity when it comes to enlargement. You cannot integrate into a country against the will of someone. So if there's one thing you can bet there will always be unanimity, it's on the enlargement of the EU. On that I have no doubt whatsoever, and it's legitimate. You can't get someone in against the will of those who are already part of the club. But I don't think the problem is unanimity. There are political problems. The problems are political. It's because even like I mentioned, I was talking about the Balkan state. You have two cases in when we're talking about enlargement. You had basically Balkan and Turkey. Turkey is a politically toxic one. It has no chance whatsoever to ever enter in the EU, and it's politically toxic for many member states. And some member states are even convinced that, not even convinced that Turkey has even remotely a place in Europe. For them, it's not a European country. And that's poisoning a bit the other kind of enlargement, like the Balkan. When you're talking about the Balkan, I can't think of a single member state who would seriously say that the Balkan has no place in the EU. I mean, if you go, you have countries further east of that. You have Greece that is right there. You have the old Slovenia. You have Romania. You have Bulgaria. It's surrounded by EU countries, so no one is saying that the Balkan has no place in the EU. I mean, the Balkan it's a natural place for the Balkan to be part of the EU. The problem is that politically, because of, I mean, partly of the Turkish question, but beyond that, because of the rise of Euroscepticism, etc., etc. Talking about making the Balkan enter the EU is politically toxic, and people don't want to redo the same mistake they did when they got the 10 Eastern countries in the EU, because we haven't finished dealing with that. And so if we were to add 4 or 5 more countries, it would add up to the mess. And they also don't want to repeat the Greek situation, because there is a bit of a consensus today that Greece was accepted maybe a bit too soon in the EU, because it was far from having finished its all its economic reform, its democratic reforms, etc., etc. But that for political reasons, because of course that's Greece. Why would you not want to Greece, the place where democracy, European democracy was, I mean, the European concept of democracy was born? I mean, of course you would want that in the EU. So, but they don't want to repeat that instance, because we saw back during the Euro crisis, it almost I won't say it almost made the EU collapse, but it almost made the Euro at least collapsed. And Europe, Greece was in very, very bad position at this time, despite all the bravado from Tsipras and consorts. So it's not as an easy. The enlargement is very, very sensitive, and it's less about. It's not a question of unanimity. It's mostly a question of national politics, internal politics. It's about making it acceptable for people and sustainable for the EU, both economically, politically, and also in terms of institution, because otherwise you just add to the mess. So let's see. Ikaros, is there a single member state that is Turkey positive at the moment? I haven't looked recently, but I think there are a number of countries. I mean, not right now, because of all the democratic problems in Turkey. But you had quite a few of member states who were not against Turkey being in the EU. Bulgaria was not necessarily against Turkey being in the EU, despite historically speaking it being a bit weird between Bulgaria and Turkey, but they were not against. I think the Netherlands at some point was not against it, because they saw it as a possible market expansion. Germany was not against. I mean, Germany has a huge Turkish diaspora, so of course they're not they're among those who were open to Turkey. So the question is not whether there are countries who are not in favor, is whether there are countries who are against, and there are a number of countries who are dead against Turkey being in the EU, and that's not going to change. France, for instance, is not going to change its position on Turkey. That's why I'm saying it's insane. Denmark, I doubt Denmark would accept Turkey in the EU, and that's only 2 examples. Now I wouldn't even think that there are more on them. And we're saying, don't you think the goal of federation is similarly naive than that of the original EU expansion? Yes and no. I mean, it's no. I mean, Ikaros, Blas, Lopecia, cover your ears. I don't want to shock you, but I mean, it's no secret. I'm a recovering federalist. So, but that being said, I'm a recovering federalist because I consider that it's not going to happen anytime soon. And I could see problems in it happening, practical problems. But I mean, you heard him, you heard Mr. Pislaru say tonight. He's in favor of it, but he's very much aware that it can't happen anytime soon because he said it himself. Right now, citizens trust their national authorities more than they trust the EU, and so the EU still need to do the groundwork to make it more acceptable for EU citizens to be in favor of a EU federation. So, yeah, to an extent, a bit naive. Naive might be a bit demeaning or strong word, but I see what you mean. I think it's a bit more. I would see it as a bit more unrealistic, especially at this stage. In 100 years, I don't know. Who knows? I mean, EU is built by crisis and circumstances. So it's who knows what can happen. Maybe at some point it will make perfect sense for the EU to become a federation. I don't know. But today, in the next 20 years, I don't see it happen, and I don't think it would even be necessarily a good idea. This guy is saying, one of my biggest fears with federalizing is that the different economic system and culture would end up forcing the federation into an unbreakable gridlock. Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you to an extent, and I think that's one of the points I made. I still think there are too many differences between the different member states, between different culture, and if you're pushing the federation too hard, I mean, in the end, when you have a single giant state with 10, 20 different culture, that's, I mean, it stops being a state, we call that an empire. And empires, historically speaking, usually don't have happy endings. So that's why also I'm a bit skeptical on that, that's personally. So 100 years realistic, but not anytime soon, I agree. Ikaros, European Miss Derry, and I are gonna have a field day with you at the pub outside of the Berlin when the federal government happens. Oh well, I'm happy to give you a field day if and when it happens outside the Berlin. So just think of Poland and Hungary, they're already blocking stuff left and right. No offense, interest. Yeah, well, I mean, it's complicated. It's very much complicated because I mean, I mentioned it, like we mentioned it consistently over the last couple of streams, but we have reached a very tricky point in the institutional reforms, especially when it comes to the veto and unanimity, because on many points, where unanimity remains the rule, it's very sensitive topics politically, and to which you could say there is a legitimate argument to say that the EU should not be able to go over a veto. So it's tricky. It's very tricky, and I think that for this kind of reference to happen, it will be entirely a question of circumstance. It will have to be because we don't have a choice that we need to move forward. And to an extent, it's already the case. To an extent, it's already the case because we see that there are too big differences between some member states that are able to block the other from moving. And I agree that we are around that point where it becomes almost unmanageable. So I stand a bit in between. So let's see. Despair. I spoke to one of my professors about the topic a while back, and we more or less reached the consensus that regional federation would be more likely as a stepping stone toward federation of the EU, or simply to allow the political complexity of having so many member states. So I mean, it depends on what you mean by regional federalization. But if you're talking about actual regions, yeah, I'm not. I'm even more skeptical about that than the federalization of countries. I think it would be even more of a mess. But it's a complex topic. It's a complex topic, and I will not claim. I mean, you know me. I never claim to have the absolute good answer. But it's a fascinating topic. It's a fascinating topic. So I see a lot of Vive l'Europe, Viva Europa. I think we'll agree with that. But it's a complicated topic. Let's see. Is there something that I missed? Well, still on the topic and still related to something I note. I'm a bit surprised because since we started the interview, so I mean, it has now become a classic of the interview to ask, are you in favor of the EU Federation? And I think apart from one or two, a couple of them, I mean, the French ones, for instance, almost all of them said that they were in favor of the EU Federation. And I have to say, I'm a bit surprised to have such a unanimity. So, is it because all the federalists are very much happy to do these Twitch interviews, or does that mean that there are more people who are in favor of a federal union that I thought of? I don't know, but I was not expecting such a clear-cut, wide majority. But yeah, maybe times are changing, like Icarus is saying. Maybe. Who knows? And yeah, and the final point I noted, and that is actually very true, is on the impact of the pandemic and the fact that it makes work complicated because you lack the human contact, the human touch, and that's very, very much a real problem, because even if you can do a lot of things there online, there are things where you need to to see the people face to face, to build a rapport, to be able to build a trust, and that you can't do that through screens. You need to be in the same room, and that's actually something that's been making work complicated in the EU. Actually, so in the council, for instance, it's since the very beginning of the pandemics. They had decided to maintain the physical meeting, at least for the ambassadors, because they considered it was impossible to do the work that they're doing at ambassador level through screens, both for security reasons, but also in terms of political in political terms, because you need to be able to talk to people, to be able to read people, to say, okay, is that something that they actually think, or is it just for the is it just a speaking point, that sort of thing. So you can't underestimate the importance of human contact, and you would be surprised how sometimes it's absurd the amount of things that work or don't work in EU policy debates because of human relations. Something will happen. A file will go fast because the rapporteur and the other shadow rapporteurs are BFF. They're all friends. They get along super well, and so things go well. Things go fast. On the other end, if you have two MEPs that can't stand each other, or they have very, very bad relation with someone in the commission or someone in the council, that will make conversation extremely complicated. Or sometimes you will have complication on the wording because an MEP decides that he doesn't like this word because he thinks that this word can mean that, or he has the feeling that it can mean that. So you can't underestimate the human aspect of politics, or even of legal negotiation. Because you're saying that you were a bunch of people. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's something that is you have to explain to people, because people see people in general, people who are not in Brussels, they see the EU as a very technocratic body. It's something artificial. It's a faceless thing. It's a machine. Machines don't have feelings. So sometimes you have to explain them that, yeah, it's a big machine. It's true, but it's people. It's people. So Little Miss Dairy is feeling excluded because she's a milk carton. I'm sorry if you felt excluded by that, but yes, we are people and milk cartons in there. We're not discriminating in there, but yeah, that's something that that you'd be surprised with, and I mean that's one of the reasons why I started this the stream and the channel, is to, well, show also this human aspect. I mean, you saw Mr. Pislaru tonight. Guy is very nice, and you would not have guessed that if you were looking that from afar, or just the very wide political statement that you were in plenary that you fall asleep by the end of the first sentence. So yeah, that's all I had on my piece of paper. Looking at the chat, if you ask people at cafe or library, they would be less in favor of federalism. Yeah, it's indeed, because like Pislaru said, the people are more attached to the national authority, because that's something that they know, and you tend to fear the unknown. All right, so unless I missed something, or you want me to talk about a final topic before we go, I will go into my conclusion. So it was a great interview, definitely one of the most enjoyable ones, I will say. So I hope I think you enjoyed it as well. And as usual, give me your feedback on Discord, on Twitter, all the things. You know how it works. Next week we will go back with an interview, but we will go north with an interview with Danish MEP Margaret Auken. The interview will be on Friday at 6. Let me look at my agenda. So it will not be on Tuesday. June. I'm lost in my own paper. That's terrible. Margaret Auken. Yes, on the 11th of June. So that's Friday, next Friday at 6. So Ikaros, you better be there. To be there to watch the interview, because that's your territory. So it'll be on Friday. So it's gonna be a bit of time until the next one. Do let me know if you want me to do like a chill stream on next Tuesday, like play a game or whatever. Let me know in Discord. I'm open to ideas. So anyway, come back next week, of course. As usual, don't forget to follow, if you haven't already, the channel. It helps a lot. Follow me on Twitter, go on Discord, where all the links are in the bio, so all you need is to click. And on this note, I thank you again for being there tonight, and I will wish you a good night, and I will see you next week, either Tuesday, let me know, or at the very least on Friday. Have a good evening, guys. Bye.